I'm not gonna lie, I did cut a couple corners on this, in that instead of making the cake from scratch, I did use a box cake mix. I tend to use stuff like that when I'm doing first time cooks, just so I can kind of figure out what I'm doing, the whole process. Because to try and do a cake from scratch, it is a time consuming process. You know, gotta get a lot of the ingredients, gotta sift it right. Whereas with a box cake, I can get everything done within half an hour, for the cake wise at least, and then I can spend the rest of the time planning how the visual look is going to be. What else I have here? Okay, so this is something I was really into for a little while, is making Wellingtons. I did this in 2020, where I practiced making a lot of Wellingtons because I wanted to do a beef Wellington for Christmas dinner. So I actually went out and bought, because beef tenderloin is super expensive, I bought pork tenderloin. No, not pork tenderloin. I bought pork loin, which is a cheaper cut, but you can get a lot more of meat for a lesser price. So it's a great meat to practice with, as opposed to using high expensive cuts of meat. And I'm not gonna lie, after a while I started to get pretty good at this. You know, the Wellingtons came out nicely. They burned a little bit at the top because they were a little too close to the heating element. It's trial and error, you know, it's stuff you gotta learn and practice with. One thing though I would love to do with you guys live on a stream one day is ribs. Sous vide ribs are absolutely amazing. Like, this is after it came out of the oven, but let me see, do I have... So this is after it came out of the water bath, actually. So you can see it's still kind of grayish a little bit. I re-seasoned it with some barbecue sauce and seasonings, and then I put it in my oven under the broiler. So it just chars the top. So, because you don't want to overcook the meat. That's the thing, is with sous vide cooking, you can cook your meat to the perfect temperature that you want, but then when you add it to another heat source, whether it's a frying pan to sear it or put it in the oven to give it like a crust on the top, you have to be careful with how long you do that, because it will also cook the meat as well. So you could overcook the meat in that regard. Depending if you're barbecuing it too. So what you would do in situations like that is you would actually cook the meat a little bit under, maybe 1 or 2 degrees below your desired temperature, so that when you put it on the heat source, it'll cook and bring it up that 1 or 2 degrees to your ideal temperature. So then you have that perfect cut or perfect temperature throughout the entire thing. And like, here's a picture of what those ribs came out like afterwards. And look how much moisture and how juicy that is. That's after a 16-hour cook, and then just a little bit of barbecue sauce and under the broiler for maybe 2 minutes max on each side, just to give it that color. But then this would just fall off the bone tender. So going back to those pork Wellingtons I was talking about before, this is actually what the interior would look like. So pork loin is a very dense cut of meat. Like, it's good, but it can be very dry. So you have your pork here, then you wrap it in prosciutto or what did they mention it? Ham. And then you wrap it in the puff pastry. So it's nice, but it was a very, very dense piece of meat. It does need like a sauce or something to it. But okay, so this is what a steak would look like sous vide. So obviously you bag it, you season it with a little bit of salt and pepper, you remove all the air from the bag and you seal it, then you put it into the water bath. So this is what I did with my Nova system. So it just sits there for about an hour-ish, hour to 2 hours, maximum of 4 hours. That's the thing about sous vide cooking, is you have a larger window Pork tenderloin can be cooked mean so it doesn't dry out too much. Yeah, like with my pork tenderloin, I would always cook it to a medium temperature. So when it does come out initially, it does come out very moist and everything. But after like a day or two, or like not a day or two, but maybe like a couple of days, it is a lot of meat to try and eat out. I'm not gonna lie to you. But back to the steak. So when it comes out, you put it in the frying pan, you can see it does have that kind of grayish look. So this is obviously seared, but along the edges you can kind of see how kind of gray it looks. But then you get a couple minutes or a couple of seconds on each side, and it comes out looking beautifully, like a perfect steak that is super juicy, super tender. Actually, for these steaks, I actually was using them for lunch prep. So here is a picture of what they look like inside. That is medium rare with a beef fried rice mixture that I made for lunches. So whilst my outer side of the steaks is like all cooked perfectly, it's pink all the way through. And that's the thing where if you go to a restaurant and you order a steak there, and they're doing it on a stove or a barbecue grill, you will notice there is that gray ring around the meat, and then the inside is pink. That's typical. That's because the heat is hotter on the outside as it travels through to the inside, because you want that inside to be your desired temp, but then the outside always gets cooked a little bit past that. So if you wanted a medium rare on the inside, your outer side might be more medium. Whereas with sous vide cooking, that heat transfer is consistent throughout the entire piece of meat, so you do not get that gray ring. So that's why my meat here looks pink all